This video is brought to you by Ridge Wallet, a slim front pocket wallet available in carbon fiber and titanium. With more than 250,000 sold, a lifetime guarantee and free shipping, get 10% off with the code GOLDFISH at ridgewallet.com. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So as you know, Tuesday means it's Type 2 or Standard Tuesday, and we have a spicy one today. This is another Experimental Frenzy deck, but this one is going a lot bigger. Most of the time you see Experimental Frenzy with like a ton of cheap red creatures, sometimes out of the sideboard to like fight against control. This deck is all in on the Frenzy, but not just Frenzy, really big, powerful creatures to go with Frenzy. So this is Gruul Frenzy. It comes to us from Sakuma Takashi, who took it to an undefeated finish in a small Japanese tournament. So congrats to Takashi on a super cool deck. A quick reminder before we break down Gruul Frenzy for Standard. If you enjoy this deck and you want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. So Gruul Frenzy is built around Experimental Frenzy, but this deck is really built around this card. A lot of times you just see Experimental Frenzy show up in red aggro decks, sometimes red splash aggro decks like Boros or something, but this deck is actually built to maximize the potentiality of Experimental Frenzy. So Frenzy, if somehow you don't know what it does, basically you can look at and play the top card of your library, but you can't play cards from your hand, then you can destroy it. So how do you actually build around this enchantment rather than just like slotting it in and hoping that things work out? And our deck has a few different options. So first off, we have Dryad Greenseeker and Wayward Swordtooth. So one of the ways that Experimental Frenzy can fizzle is if you hit too many lands. If you hit too many lands, the second land drop, you're kind of going to get stuck, be forced to stop frenzying. But Dryad Greenseeker and Wayward Swordtooth, when you can see the top card of your library and play the top card of your library, are great ways to force through those land packets. So Dryad Greenseeker, instead of just tapping it for value, which we can do in the early game, the idea is that we will play our first land with Frenzy, and then play a bunch of cards, and when we get to our second Frenzy land, we can just tap our Greenseeker to get that land out of the way and hopefully get to more non-land cards. And Wayward Swordtooth lets us play an extra land, and with Experimental Frenzy out, we can play that card off the top of our library. So it's kind of like a build your own Oracle of Moldiah almost, which is another way that we can not only get through those land pockets, but it also gives us a ton of lands on the battlefield because we're ramping really quickly with these cards. We also have Treasure Map, which is kind of our last way to control the Frenzy. If we get to like our second or third, depending on how many Greenseekers and Swordtooths we have, land, we can always just scry it away with Treasure Map and hopefully hit another non-land card to keep frenzying. So the plan is we're going to be playing tons of cards in multiple cards each turn with Experimental Frenzy. So how are we actually trying to win the game? And here we have two really spicy, really sweet options. So first off, Banefire and Multani Yasmaya's Avatar take advantage of the fact that we're essentially like an Experimental Frenzy ramp deck. We're using Experimental Frenzy with those Swordtooths and with our Dryad Greenseekers to kind of ramp, and then once we get a bunch of mana, we can cast a massive, uncounterable Banefire at our opponent's face, or just cast a huge Multani Yasmaya's Avatar, which is going to be massive with all the lands we have on the battlefield, and smash our opponent down with this huge trampling beater. So that's kind of the main way of finishing the game. We also have Llanowar Elves, which just gets us to our Frenzy faster, plus it's really cheap, so we can play it easily when we are frenzying. Otherwise, we kind of have just normal mid-range stompy type stuff. Merfolk Branchwalker, Steel Leaf Champion, just very efficient threats for their mana cost, being potentially a 3-2 for 2 mana and a 5-4 for just 3 mana. And then we have our other big mid-rangey type finishers. Nullhide Ferox, just a one-of, little clunky with things like our Banefire and our Experimental Frenzy, but it's really big and hard to deal with. A little bit of protection from discard of things like Nicol Bolas. Regisaur Alpha is a great deal for its mana cost, giving us a hasty trampling dinosaur and also the big body, and then it works really well with our one of Ghalta Primal Hunger, which can potentially come down with haste and just smash our opponent's face. And since we have Regisaur Alphas and Multanis and Steel Leaf Champions, we're going to get our Ghalta down to 2 mana really quickly in the deck. So these cards are kind of our backup way of finishing the game. If we're not Banefiring or Multaniing, we can just play really undercosted 4 or 5 mana stuff and beat our opponent down that way as we frenzy through our deck with Experimental Frenzy. Otherwise, we get a single Vivian Reed, good way to generate some value, get rid of artifacts, enchantments, some flyers, which are pretty popular in Standard. Mana base, pretty straightforward. Lots of green lands, some dual lands will get better once we get Stomping Ground and Ravnica Allegiances. As far as the sideboard, we get a ton of ways to customize our removal. Lava Coil for the early game and exiling things like Rekindling Phoenix, Banefire, uncounterable against control, Fiery Cannonade, Starve Extinction as sweepers, Crushing Canopy can hit flyers or artifacts, Thrashing Brontodon, another efficient creature with upside, Deathgorge Scavenger to deal with annoying graveyard threats, also gain some life against aggro, and Shaper Sanctuary to protect our creatures from removal. And that is Gruul Frenzy for Standard, and that's our instant deck tech for today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.